Many people know that they're supposed to start reading or start reading better material, and that's something that we've kind of lost in the modern era. And I think the reason for that is that there's so much information out there that's digital and easier to consume than books. I was not a good reader. I was really excited to learn how to read when I was a kid, but I quickly fall off that bandwagon because we started reading books in school to sit down for a long time and focus on this particular topic and activity. That is not something that I was good at. I was much more likely to want to go up in a tree somewhere, to climb, to run. I was not about the sitting down type of life. But as I've gotten older, I've understood that reading is a very important skill. I want to share the 8 realizations, the 8 facts about reading that I discovered that really helped me to become a reader once again. Fact number 1 is that reading gives you access to all of the greatest minds on the planet. This is really important because you're not going to be able to understand as much about life as some of the greatest minds in history, especially in their disciplines. If you're unable to read, you will be locked out of the knowledge from all these different types of resources that would be really helpful for you in your life. They're just going to be locked away from you because you're unable to read. Reading is necessary to participate in the written medium of communication. And so if you are unable to communicate via the written word, you're going to miss out on a lot of the information that is distilled down by some of these great minds. Fact number 2 is that reading is a skilled art. Reading is not something that just comes naturally. Well, that's kind of not true. It's not something that we're born with. It's something that has to be trained. So when you see that someone's a good reader, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were born just able to read. It means that they enjoyed the effort and the work that it took to get to the point of being a good reader. If you're in shape, if you're a person who is in shape, it probably means that you enjoy going to the gym, or you found a way to enjoy going to the gym. People who like to read are just the same way about books. They enjoy working their minds and thinking in the same type of way that books force you to. For many years, I did not consider myself to be a reader because I wasn't able to focus in that type of way. But reading is a skill that you can develop. Good readers have a lot of skill that they've developed and that we don't have as normal people. And so that takes me to point number 3, which is that reading is a practice-reliant activity. I did not read very much growing up. I would do everything that I could to read audiobooks or listen to audiobooks, get summaries, these different things, because I did not want to practice the art of reading. It was boring, it's not super fun, but the reality is that reading is like a muscle, just like anything else. And so if you're able to sit down and train that muscle, then eventually you will get better at it. The first book that I read, cover to cover, in probably my whole life, was this book right here. It was How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. And this book changed my entire thinking about reading in general. In that book, his philosophy is that true reading is something that you have to work at and practice, and if you are not able to consume dense books, then that just means that you haven't built the skill of reading up to the point where you can actually appreciate and track with some of these great books and ideas. And so that gave me a lot of encouragement that I just needed to put in the work in order to get to the point where I could read what I wanted to read if that was going to be the goal of mine. Number 4 is that reading is just thinking. And what I mean by that is you can read in a passive sense. If you're skimming a newspaper or an article or something like that, you don't have to try very hard because the information's right there. You're not reading for true understanding of a topic. You're reading for information about a topic. Reading for understanding is a thoughtful practice, an exercise. The information and ideas in that book will not just jump out of the page for you. You're gonna have to enter into the thoughts presented and wrestle with the author's intention. If you are expecting to just open up a book, it's not gonna be helpful for you unless you understand the thought process of the author. Everything that happens when you read a book happens in your mind. Your eyes connect you in the book, but everything happens in the mind. There is very little difference between the act of reading and the act of thinking. And so when you're reading, you have to first think about what the author intended with whatever they wrote down, and then you have to contend with your own thoughts about, do I believe that this is true? Reading is just thinking. The fifth fact about reading is that it's concentrated work. Concentrated work means that you have to develop the ability to focus, and it's something that involves labor. Right now we live in such a dopamine-filled world where everything on our phones and our devices grabs our attention. You don't have to process everything in your mind. It's already pre-processed for you and then delivered to you in a very easy medium. And that's great if you want quick facts about something, if you want to be entertained. If reading is just thinking and you're trying to develop your mind, listening to something is not going to give you the same experience that reading does. Podcasts and summary books come at you and you don't have the time to process in the same way than you do if you're actually physically reading the book yourself. In order to truly get the marrow out of a book or a piece of literature, you have to sit down and contend with the issues and ideas yourself. If you just listen to it, you might come up against a difficult topic or a difficult idea, and the audiobook will just keep going as if you understood. When you're reading a book, be sure to understand the thought process of the author all the way through. Otherwise, you're gonna lose it. Jeez. Fact number 7 about reading is that it is self-motivated study. When we think of study, we think of studying for a test, like in school. The problem is that study is much more than that. And when I say reading is self-motivated study, I mean that for years in school, we were forced to read for assignments or for papers or for presentations. That meant that we prioritized reading just enough to deliver probably a poor presentation on the topic. And all of that work was also motivated by external forces like a teacher or a curriculum or whatever. Reading ultimately is a self-motivated activity. You have to pick up the book because you're convinced that the act of reading that book is going to change your life in some positive way. That's the first part, is that it's self-motivated. Second part is that it's study. If you really want to get the true understanding that the book has to offer, then you need to read a section of the book and then think about, okay, well, do I agree with that? Take notes after you read a chapter. Don't take notes during the chapter because then you lose the train of thought that the author's taking you on. At the end of the chapter, write down what you remember the main points to be, and that's going to help you along the way to continue to track mentally with what you're consuming. Number 7 is that reading is goal dependent. If I am entrepreneurially minded, then that means that I'm going to most likely consume entrepreneurial material. The material that I'm interested in reading is about business, about leadership, about all these different things. If I pick up a book like this, The Art of Practicing, which is about practicing music. I like practicing music, but this isn't the material that's going to push me toward my goals. And so if I were to try and sit down and read something like that, it would take me a very long time. And so what we want to do is instead pick reading materials that you are interested in and that are going to develop you toward your goals. And lastly, number 8 is that reading is the path to enlightenment and a truly educated mind. Many people right now are educated. I am educated. But the reason that I am educated and not truly educated is because all of the information so far in my life has been thrust upon me by teachers, school. But true education happens when you make a commitment to yourself that you're going to be an educated person, which means that you're going to be continually growing, you're going to be continually developing your mind, And the only way to do that is to continue to confront and wrestle with difficult ideas. And the only way to wrestle with difficult ideas is to read books. Now, there's other mediums that you can do this in. You can have interesting conversations with people, and that can change your thinking. You can listen to audio mediums of information, but I think it's worse. What reading does is that it actually changes the way that you think and the way that you see the world. Reading is necessary on the path to the good life. So that's all I have for you. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully I've inspired you to go and read for yourself. Find a material that you enjoy. Realize that you're not a bad reader if you're not able to just pick up a book and start going. Train yourself up to reading what you want to read, and understand that the only way to live a fully developed life is to develop this skill of reading. I'll catch you guys in the next one.